Hello and welcome to my very first screencast. Today I'll be talking to you about configuring NFS on a NetApp storage system. One of the first steps to take before actually beginning the configuration is to ensure the storage system is licensed to provide NFS services. If there is no license for NFS on your storage system, you'll be unable to continue configuring. After logging onto your storage system through the NetApp on-command system manager, you'll be able to enter licenses in the license panel, which you can find through navigating on the menu on the left, through Configuration, System Tools and Licenses. Once on the license pane, you can click Add to add licenses. In the prompt, add your 7-character license and click Add. Hopefully you've entered the correct license and it accepts this. You can check that it has got the NFS license by looking on the licenses node on the license panel. Now we can move on to creating an export to share files from a volume to Unix-based clients. From the menu on the left, navigate to the Exports panel. This can be done through Storage, then Exports. If this exports item is in the list, either refresh the page or re-add the license key. On the Exports panel, click Create to create an export. In the pop-up, you'll want to browse for the path of your export. Simply expand the root and any aggregates you may have, and then select your chosen volume. Now we need to change the permission of the export. Select the only rule in the permissions list and click Edit. You can configure the export any way you desire, but for my interests I'll only allow read-only access. So select the All Hosts Access rule, click Edit, and change the access attribute in the access list. Make sure to click Save, then Modify. Finally, click Create to create the export. In the Export panel you should see the newly created export. It is also possible to create an export through the command line. Open up a console or telnet into the storage server to access the command line interface. Ensure to log in as root first. Then type in the following command to check to see what exports there are. As you can see at the bottom, vol0 is our export that we created earlier. Now make sure that auto exporting is on. This makes creating exports very easy, as only the volume needs to be created. So the next step will be to create a new volume, like so. This should automatically have an export created from it. This may take a few minutes depending on how fast your storage system is. Now we should check if that has worked and the export has been made. Yes, right at the bottom there, NFS vol1 is our newly created export. Now we can check to see if the exports are visible from a Linux client. In your Linux client, open up a console and type the following to ensure the client can see the NFS exports, with the IP being the storage system. The command returns a list of all the NFS exports it can see on the storage system. Here you can spot NFS vol1 created earlier. We can create a queue tree back at the storage system on NFS vol1. This queue tree can then be used as an export, but is stored on the first export NFS vol1. The reason for this is queue trees are useful for dividing up storage from one volume. can't see it yet, but we can check it with the show mount command on the client. As you can see, tree 1 is in the middle of the list, so it is visible to the client. If you don't have your Linux client available just yet, you can still check if the export has been created back on the storage system by typing the export FS, which should list the exports that you are currently exporting. Next, we can mount the exports on a Linux client. Then we can use the exports as storage and place files in them. First, we need to create a directory for the mount to be placed, and then a subdirectory to make things a bit more clearer into where the files are going to go. Now I can actually mount the exports on the client, so then the client can use the exports to store files. Once the export has been mounted, we can change to another terminal, then navigate to the directory of the export we just mounted, and then check what's inside it with the ls command. There should be absolutely nothing. And as you can see, there's nothing returned by that command, so there wasn't anything in there. There are other ways to list stuff in the directory which I've tried here, but failed miserably. So the next thing we can do is stick a file in there to see if our storage actually works. Make sure you're sudo first, super user that is, and then type in ls again, check that there's a file in there. It returns that there is, which is our test file we created just before. Next we can mount our Q tree that we created, which uses the first export as storage. Before it's mounted though, just like the export beforehand, it needs directories for it to be mounted to. Make sure you're the super user first, so you don't make the same mistake I just did. And then once that's mounted, we can do the same we did with the export earlier, listing the directory and putting a file in there to test that it works. So first change the directory, list it, then with the touch command, create another file, compare what we had earlier. As you can see, the ls command returned the test file too, which we just created, so it shows us that the storage is working. If you've been following along, congratulations, you can now configure NFS on a NetApp storage system and have 2 functioning NFS exports using only 1 volume that can be accessed by the Linux client. Thank you for watching my very first screencast. I hope to post more and better screencasts in the near future.